Hello everybody. In this video, I'm going to talk about a pretty important social issue. I'm going to be talking about why Americans are more lonely and disconnected than ever before. I have a couple of really interesting articles that kind of describe what the problem is, and they also offer a few solutions as well. And then I'll offer my take on the issue, and I'll propose some potential solutions to help fix this epidemic. All right, let's get into it. So like I said, I have two articles that we're going to dive into. The first article talks about kids and why they're more disconnected than ever before. The second article talks about why adults are more lonely and disconnected than ever before. And both articles kind of provide solutions to the problem. And like I said at the end, I'll give my take. Okay, this first article is called "Schools Are Competing with Cell Phones. Here's How They Think They Could Win." It's written by Carolyn Thompson from the Associated Press, and I'll cover the highlights of what the article says. Educators say their tried and true lesson plans are no longer enough to keep students engaged at a time of struggling mental health, shortened attention spans, reduced attendance, and worsening academic performance. At the crux of these challenges, addiction to cell phones. Now, adults are trying new strategies to reverse the malaise. I mean, look, studies are showing that kids today are struggling with mental health more than they ever have. Their attention spans are shorter than ever. And this article says that the main reason for this is addiction to cell phones. This is becoming more and more popular, is the cell phone bans in schools. You probably know somebody whose kid goes to a school where their cell phones are not allowed, and I'm sure you hear all about it from the kid. But teachers apparently are saying that these cell phone bans are not enough. The article says, they argue for alternative stimulation, steering students outdoors or toward extracurriculars to fill time that they might otherwise spend alone online. So it's obvious that social media and cell phone use are distracting people, especially kids in the classroom, and it's making them become much less engaged with extracurriculars, in class discussions. Later in the article, it talks about how kids are becoming less social inside of the classroom as well due to a cell phone addiction, is causing them to contribute less to classroom discussions. Everybody and their mother knows about the negative impact of overuse of technology in social media. The article says, in Spokane, Washington, schools are ramping up extracurriculars to compete with phones after hours. So this school in Washington, they're heavily investing in after-school activities like performing arts or clubs or sports. It says, isolating in your home every day after school for hours on end on a personal device has become normalized. And boy, is that true. And I know this because just 7-8 years ago, I was a high school student myself. Currently, I coach high school sports at the freshman level, and I see it every day with the kids in my school community. So the idea is from 3 to 5:30, you are in a club, you're in a sport, you're at an activity instead of on a phone. I don't think they're forcing kids to engage in this, but they're heavily investing, like I said, in these opportunities for kids to partake in these activities after school. So school gets out 2:30 or 3 o'clock, and then until 5:30, you're engaging in an activity of your choice, whether it's a sport and whatnot. The article says, in a Gallup poll conducted last November, only 48% of middle or high school students said they felt motivated to go to school, and only 52% felt they did something interesting every day. Can you imagine how much higher this number would be if every kid got to choose an after-school activity that they were interested in? I would bet that their interest in going to school in the first place would increase. Most school districts have extracurriculars available to the kids, but there are some school districts that don't have many opportunities for those kids, and I wonder how high their interest rate is in going to class in those districts. A minute ago, I just said that these cell phone addictions are causing kids to become less engaged in class discussions. And the article says the reason for this is students are unwilling to participate in class when anything they say can rocket around the school in a messaging app or on social media. They're afraid to get canceled. Students get very, very quiet when topics such as sexuality, gender, or politics come up in novels. 8 years ago, you had hands shooting up all over the place. Nobody wants to be labeled in a certain way anymore, or to be ridiculed or to be called out for politics. And one way that teachers are getting around this issue is using websites such as Parler. It says that allows students to have online discussions anonymously. So it's kind of like a social media post. You can post anonymously on some websites without the fear of getting backlash. And the same idea kind of applies to in-class discussions, which is kind of interesting. I believe that was the end of the article. My take is technology is here to stay. And in fact, in the coming years, technology and social media is likely to be even more prevalent in our lives, and especially in the lives of young people. So what can we do to make sure that our kids and our young people are more engaged, are engaging in important discussions, especially in the classroom? I think we need to make sure that people are educated on the effects of overuse of technology and the effects of social media misuse. And of course, it's not all to do with phones and addiction to phones, but a lot of the problem stems from the false reality that using a cell phone can create. So I think we need more education on the issue, and like the article alluded to, we need more alternatives to the stimulation that phones give people. Banning phones during class time is probably a good idea, but it's just a band-aid. You need a solution to the problem. And to me, that's giving these kids alternatives. Every school district in the US should be heavily investing to the best of their ability in after-school and extracurricular activities. I mean, think about it. What do most schools already have? They have a handful of sports. They might have a book club. They might have a gardening club like my school had. They might have student council and maybe a few other things. Schools should be going to each student individually and asking them, hey, what would you like to see in an extracurricular or an after-school activity? And then gathering all the data from around the school, from all of the students, and then choosing to implement and to invest in new activities based off what the students want. It probably doesn't cost much to add a new club, especially if they're student ran. Okay, switching gears now. This article is from NBC, and it's written by Aria Bendix. In this article, she talks about why adults that don't have a college degree are more likely to have no close friends and inevitably become more lonely and isolated. Now, of course, there are definitely outliers. There are plenty of people who don't have college degrees who are extremely social, extremely happy, and content with their level of engagement with friends and whatnot. And then, of course, on the flip side, you'll find people with college degrees who are lonely. But these are outliers, right? This is just the average, So getting right into the problem. Nearly all US adults used to have close friends. She says, in 1990, the share of the population that said they didn't was low and roughly the same no matter one's education level. Just 2% for people with college degrees and 3% without. In 1990, 2% of people with college degrees reported not having close friends, and only 3% who didn't have a college degree reported not having close friends. But a recent survey suggests that share has risen overall, particularly among those who did not graduate from college. She describes it as a kind of class divide in people's level of social engagement and connection. So now, nearly a quarter of US adults with a high school diploma or lower education said they had no close friends. And it's even higher for Black adults at 35%. 25% to 35% of US adults who only have a high school diploma or less say they don't have close friends. But here's the big difference. Only 10% of people with college degrees said the same. So this study says that 10% of people with college degrees report not having close friends, whereas people without college degrees will 25 to 30% of the time not have close friends. So the findings come from a survey of around 6,600 adults conducted by the Survey Center on American Life, a nonprofit that researches how people's lives are shaped by culture, politics, and technology. According to a January poll from the American Psychiatric Association, APA, around 30% of adults say that they felt lonely at least once per week over the past year, and 10% say they're lonely every day. And to express this problem even more, the US Surgeon General declared loneliness an epidemic last year, citing its links to heart disease, stroke, dementia, and premature death. So, loneliness and isolation is directly linked to heart disease, stroke, dementia, and premature death, as declared by the US Surgeon General. So one explanation of this trend is that being alone is less boring now. Thanks to video games and streaming services, people may be less likely to join social groups or spend time with friends or family because of this. So it used to be you were home alone, what were your options? Radio, TV, but nowadays you have access to social media and the internet and streaming services and video games that can keep you entertained for as long as you want. And these new ways to keep you entertained also cause you to be less likely to join social groups or spend time with friends or family in real life. And it says, for those without college degrees, there are fewer opportunities to engage in social activities because they might lack the time or the money to go to bars or restaurants. We know that people with college degrees tend to make more money, right? And when you have more money, you have more freedom of your time, usually. And if you have more time, you can spend that time socializing, going to restaurants, going to bars, going to these social activities. And another point that I want to make is when you go to college, especially if it's a 4-year program, it's imperative upon your success in college that you create relationships and that you engage in campus or online discussions in your class. You make friendships by necessity, whether it's group projects or hanging out or going to parties, or you have a class with 30 other people that are in the same major as you. So you have all of these things in common that you can hit it off with right away. So you're in this environment that is perfectly made to build connections and friendships that you can later fall back on when you leave college. People who don't go to college don't have these things. So this survey said that college-educated adults were more likely to go to restaurants or coffee shops to strike up conversations with neighbors compared to people without degrees. They're also more likely to be members of a neighborhood association, sports league, or a hobby group. This is a vital point that the author makes. We put so much of the onus of creating and maintaining friends on the individuals instead of institutions. We've shifted all of the work, all of the effort onto individuals who now have to coordinate, organize, schedule their social engagements, as opposed to having them occur organically. This is why college-educated people have such an unfair advantage when it comes to being socially healthy and not being isolated, not being disconnected and lonely. And it's because they were part of an institution, a college, that breeds community, that breeds friendships and engagement. The author says we need to put the focus on institutions rather than the individuals. So what does this mean? Well, the author says that one of the issues has to do with geography. So it says a 2022 study found that neighborhoods with higher poverty rates have fewer public gathering spaces, and many communities don't have the money to invest in their public spaces. People who have college degrees tend to live in more affluent communities, and these richer communities have more parks, more public spaces, more beautiful places to walk around and to connect with the community. And people who live in higher poverty neighborhoods tend to be not college educated, so they already have a disadvantage when it comes to making social connections. The end of the article talks about the upside of the survey that they did. Less than 3% of people reported having no friends at all. So people have friends. They feel like they don't necessarily have the time to nurture those friends. And that's when having money and time comes in, right? People feel like they have friends, but they feel like it's more casual than close. The researcher says that casual friendships still offer benefits. People report having better psychological well-being on days when they have more interactions with a wider variety of people, including ones they barely know. Social interactions in general help reduce or stave off symptoms of anxiety and depression. And the final part here says, the bottom line is all types of social interactions and relationships matter, particularly for health and well-being. So look, this is why people who live in lower income neighborhoods have a lower quality of life, have lower life expectancy, and have higher rates of loneliness, isolation, etc. that can lead to diseases, anxiety, stroke, stress, a whole bunch of other, heart issues, and more. We should be aggressively investing in low-income neighborhoods, and especially targeting the ones where people are reporting that they have more loneliness and more isolation and less social engagement. We can conduct polls and find that out easily. But of course, we'd have to ask, where's the money going to come from? These low-income communities don't have money. The local governments in these low-income communities don't have a lot of money to work with. I mean, this is why the federal government and state governments put so much money in community development and into improving social safety nets, but we need to do more of that. The next few videos I'm going to do are a bit more lighthearted, so I'm looking forward to doing those, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.